Imagine this. You have always lived your life the way you were told to. You always did your best getting that degree or getting that job. You are always kind to your superiors and you always do your best to be a righteous and ordinary employee. The reward for your efforts? Well, your job is monotone and boring, your boss kicks you around, and your life pretty much sucks. To make things worse, you are currently held ransom by some eccentric gun maniacs. And the company you've been so eagerly working for already declared you dead, meaning they don't really care if you survive or not. What would you do? Well, in case of our main character, Rokuro Okajima, also known as Rock, he decides, screw my old life, I will become a badass now. And thus he becomes a member of the Black Lagoon, the very same group of pirates that kidnapped him. The show follows Rock as he tries to adapt to his new life and the wacky adventures that unfold during this process. As for the other crew members, well, it becomes obvious rather quickly why Rock decided to stay with them. They are criminals, gangsters, or whatever you wanna call them. However, funnily enough, they are more honest to him than all the people he has worked for in the past. They are genuine with their behavior, and maybe even more importantly, although they are independent from each other, they cooperate like a real team. They won't leave each other behind just like that, unlike, the big old company that immediately dropped Rock once he wasn't of any use for them anymore. Which brings me to one of my favorite aspects of the show. In Black Lagoon you will witness a lot of shooting, explosions, crazy people all over the place, but although I did enjoy the over-the-top action, and there is also a lot of it, if you would ask me what sold me on the show, I would suggest something different. And I think no episode shows what I mean better than episode 7, my favorite episode of the series. If you haven't watched Black Lagoon, let me give you some context. I've already mentioned Rock, right? Well, as one might already assume by his previous lifestyle, he doesn't really seem to be cut out for this, gangstar way of living. I mean, he was working a 9-to-5 office job before, He's just your everyday guy basically. Meet Revi on the other hand. Regarding her upbringing, she is pretty much the complete opposite of Rock. Right from a young age, she was forced to get around all by herself. She has seen the dark back alleys and knows how the mafia operates. For her, life is a continuous battle between eating and being eaten, and her behavior resembles that. Once let loose, she is like a wild street dog, using her insane accuracy and skill to turn any opponent into Swiss cheese. In contrast, Rock has a completely different mentality. His strength lies within his quick thinking and his diplomatic wit. He also has a hard time suppressing his empathy. Throughout the last episodes, we've seen the different ideologies collide more and more. And the conflict in this episode is the straw that breaks the camel's back. Earlier in the episode, we've seen Revi and Brock meeting up with these, gangster sisters or whatever. Anyway, the Black Lagoon needs to receive guns from them for their next job. But it turns out they will only hand it out for a discount. It doesn't really matter that much. The point is, Revi tries to get the goods her usual way, via brute force. She loses her temper and threatens the sisters, which leave both parties in a stalemate. At this point, it seems like a successful deal is completely out of reach. Unexpectedly, however, Brock takes the initiative. He plays his cards right and manages to de-escalate the situation with both parties on good terms. Revi is very frustrated by that, and once Brock and her meet up once again, an argument arises. The thing is, Revi, although she might not exactly admit it, has looked down on Brock. Not because she dislikes him or even sees him as incompetent, but rather because she thinks he is not made for this kind of business. The previous scene, however, not only showed that Rock might not only be a better fit for the job than expected, but Rock also managed to turn the tables around when Revi was unable to. Revi thinks that because of her rough upbringing, she is entitled to be better at this kind of business than former pencil pusher Brock. And Brock, being suddenly able to handle the situation so well, especially when she couldn't, deeply hurts her in her pride. Brock, on the other hand, is sick and tired of being a kiss-ass like he used to be in his old job. And for the first time in the show, he speaks up and even challenges Revi, telling her that brute force alone won't solve every issue, and that despite their different past, they are both on equal terms now as crew members. We have seen Revi sort of tested before, but this is where her beliefs and her way of thinking are really questioned for the first time. Brock might not be a gun-shooting badass, but he has a point here. And nothing encapsulates that better than this scene, where Revi, frustrated with the situation, punches Brock in the face. This is where she underestimates Brock, however. As he said, he is done apologizing. And probably against Ravi's expectations, he doesn't go down on his knees begging for forgiveness. He doesn't even try to evade the punch. Instead, he takes it right to the face and just looks at Ravi. He won. You see it in Ravi's face at that very moment. She knows that she can't beat Brock with brute force. She knows that she lost. This entire scene is a confrontation, of course, but I think it shows one of Black Lagoon's biggest strengths, which are the character dynamics. Ravi and Brock are friends, and the intensity of the scene doesn't take away from that. I would say the opposite. I think the reason why both of their initial reactions were so strong in the first place is because they have become comrades. Think about it, if a random stranger online insults you, well, it might leave a bad aftertaste in your mouth. But you will probably just go on with your day as usual. However, if someone close to you, someone who you value the opinion of, criticizes you, that's usually something that hits us far harder. The same thing applies for Ravi. Just a scene ago, she was told to quote-unquote go to hell, and she even had a gun pointed to her head by one of the sisters. But clearly, she wasn't very fazed by that at all, and that's why her character was unable to grow for so long. She was living her life on her own for so long, always doing things the way she knew, with a weapon in her hand and a bloodlust in her heart. She always distanced herself from other people, and that's why she never felt challenged in her beliefs. That is until she meets Brock. And that isn't a bad thing at all. In fact, it's for the same reason that Ravi's character is able to further grow from this point onward, and why she starts to accept Brock as a crew member. Honestly, this scene was my highlight of the anime, so sorry if that part got a bit dragged out, but I think it's so rare that shows actually try to show the other side of friendship. Sure, having fun with your buddies, of course that's nice and good, but conflict is an inevitable yet crucial part of human relationships as well, that I feel like not many shows, media in general, dares to touch on. So I was very surprised how well Black Lagoon handled this. At the end of the day, the argument got very heated, but ultimately ended with both parties learning something from each other. And I think from this point onward, you can really feel how their friendship benefited from this. Okay, but I think it's impossible to end this review here without ever mentioning the badass insanity of the show. So, here are some of my highlights. The way Ravi turns her music on before she goes on a murder spree. It's just really cool. This guy just narrowly escaped death. Twice. And the building they were holding their negotiations in is being stormed by the mafia. His natural reaction, he lights off a cigarette. Gotta get those priorities straight, right? This girl is a literal made Terminator. One episode is entirely dedicated to massacring a bunch of neo-Nazis on a boat. Strong Wolfenstein vibes if you ask me. And there's more, but I think you get the idea. If you ask me, there's also something very western about Black Lagoon. Honestly, this is one of the few anime that could, theoretically, very well work as a live-action adaptation. But you better keep that a secret because,
I will take all your favorite shows and turn them into garbage.
Yeah, please Netflix, don't. Just don't. So yeah, Black Lagoon. A very enjoyable action thrill ride, and that's why you should watch it. As always, thanks for watching and goodbye.